Buddy, I'm Tom Burton today, and this is my friend Tom Burton.
We never you cannot get enough of Tom Burton.
Restream, what are you doing to us? You're killing us today. I cannot figure out for the life of me why it's pulling in your name twice, but I'm sure it's user error.
Yeah.
But we'll go from there. Well, Tom, good to see you today.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see me.
Yeah, good to see you twice.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into today because I think it's excuse me, I think it's a good social topic. Get asked a lot about does social selling really work? What's it good for and all that? And you came up, I mean, we've been talking about this model that really, in my opinion, doesn't have anything to do with social. It has everything to do with sales and how to use social media as part of the overall big picture sales process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the topic today of social is more than just capturing meetings, really speaks to that.
Yeah, and I think there's and certainly, you had Carson on again, last Friday, Carson Heady from Microsoft,
Yeah.
right? Is the objective of using social as a conduit, as a vehicle. It's not the objective is the same as any sales process, right? Which is ultimately to bring on new customers, expand customers, generate more revenue, do other, business related transactions, right? That's the goal. We don't just set off, even in traditional sales, we don't just set out to get a meeting and quit right there, right?
Yeah.
Nobody hits a quota with a meeting. So, it's really important then to think about, okay, well, how am I using this to get the ultimate objective, which is to get a sale or additional revenue or customer expansion, or, or even I'm seeing now, customers and people we're working with that are using this strategy to build their partner networks and to build business development relationships and all of that. So it doesn't necessarily even have to be a product or a service sale. It just is a business outcome that I'm looking for that, has some sort of, generally a contract or a transaction associated with it.
Yeah. So, hello, Andre. Thanks for joining us today. Good to see you again, my friend. Pretty consistently
I'm
joining us.
I'm glad that people found us. That's pretty good after all that.
Yeah. Exactly. And as we get jumping into this, Sandy jumped in and nobody hits a quota with the meeting.
Sounds like a new t-shirt. I think that's a new t-shirt.
I know. Not, I'm struggling with the social selling sucks t-shirt, to be honest. I think that the strategy around it was capturing people's attention because a lot of them are like, well, I thought you were a social selling guy. And I don't think I'm a social selling guy. I think I'm a sales guy who is discovered that social media is the most efficient way to generate sales. And too often the whole, social selling is because people think of it as, hey, let me go on social media and use LinkedIn messaging as part of a get connected, send them messages, tell them how awesome I am, and then ask for a meeting. And what we have talked about is that this is a much bigger sales play than just getting the meeting. And you alluded to it, that you and I have both been talking to Carson a lot. We've been on live with him multiple times now between the two of us. And, just to piggyback on his 9-figure deal, that he attributes social media, LinkedIn, to being a big part of the success of that deal. And when he talks about it, it's not, I use social media to get a meeting. In fact, what he says,
he didn't get a 9-figure meeting. He got a 9-figure deal.
Right. But, and even he got the first meeting through, part of it was some social work, but he also sent the CEO of the company a copy of the Microsoft CEO's book, highlighted some key passages, and sent it to him.
Mm-hmm.
And what I loved about when he shared that is that's just a brilliant tactic, but it was a tactic that was more suitable for print and mail, right? Got a book, made some personal effort, highlighted some things, wrote a note, stuck it in an envelope, and probably FedExed, overnighted it to him. But the model itself was sharing valuable information with somebody as a way to build a rapport, build a relationship, add value to them, not pound away and ask for a meeting.
No, that was just a step in the journey, right? That
Yeah.
was a step in the journey along the way. Um, and he used, and again, he even said that on your meeting or your call the other day, right? Is that social isn't necessarily any more important than other channels, right? It's using the right channel at the right time for the right purpose. But I
Right.
think what we're seeing is that the orchestration of all of this tends to happen more often now over social, right, versus other channels. So if you
Yeah.
think of social as sort of the conductor or the air traffic, the air traffic control, and of course I may have some phone calls, of course I may have some Zoom meetings, of course I may send a book in the mail, or in-person meetings or whatever, but it's all orchestrated and coordinated and driven ultimately through the social side of things. Again, with the goal of achieving that outcome of a sales transaction or a business transaction versus just, hey, I got a meeting or somebody was
Hmm.
willing to talk to me.
Yeah. And I do think that there is a bit, and I know I've emphasized this with certain populations of people, especially in the BDR world, about how you use social as an outreach cadence to earn the first meeting. And that's
Hmm.
really important,
Hmm.
especially for a BDR. But if you're a full cycle AE, it's much more than just that. And I think, and I say this a lot, is nothing has changed. We just do things differently.
Hmm.
When you're a full cycle AE, it's about staying top of mind. It's about, that known, liked, and trusted. But in our modern world, as we talk about, especially as we get into more demand generation, we're talking about awareness and interest and creating demand. Well, how do we do that? Well, we do that by sharing information. In a social world, we happen to call it content, but all it is sharing information. And there's lots of ways that you can have those conversations or share that information. Some of it's informal at events. Maybe you run into somebody in the aisle at a conference. Oh, hey, I haven't seen you for a while, and you have a chat. Maybe it's in a bar. Maybe it's in a networking event. Maybe it is in a formal sit down. Maybe it's by sending them something in the mail or email or having a conversation on a phone call. There's lots of different channels for doing that. And I think when we talk social, and the reason I did the social selling sucks model is to capture people's attention, because we're not saying social's it. Like, you do everything inside social. We're saying you got to add social to your existing, toolkit, and use the right tool at the right time for the right person.
Hmm.
And sometimes social is it. Sometimes it's not.
No, but I do think it's more of an overarching, right? It overarches a lot of the other tools is sort of your primary
Mhm,
vehicle, your primary tool, your primary channel, I guess, for lack of a better word. And that's a lot of what we're talking about is how do we use that as the primary channel?
mhm.
And, I thought as Carson said really well, why would I use that as the primary channel? Because it scales a lot better. I can get
Right.
a lot more done. I'm a lot more productive. I can get, I can accomplish way more with social than I can accomplish with just email and phone alone.
Right.
So and that's the why whole thing and as he said, right, I've made a lot of money that I never would have made if I didn't have social,
That was huge.
you know.
Right. And
So
I think the at scale portion of it, when done tactically and strategically, really accelerates and amplifies your effort. And here's what I mean practically. Um, Prior to the internet, if you will, you have a conversation with the prospect, you door knock, you phone call, whatever, you have a conversation. And then an hour later, you have a conversation with another prospect. It's pretty routine to refer to the previous conversation. And maybe you don't use their name, right? I don't say, hey, I was speaking to Tom Burton the other day, one of your competitors, but I may say, I was speaking to another, XYZ title. And one of the conversation topics that we had was around this. How does this pertain to you and your business as well? Well, what are you doing in that process? Well, you're using your professional expertise, you're using your experiences to add value to somebody that's sitting in front of you in a conversation. Why? because we want them to see us as somebody that is valuable, trustworthy, adds insights, is somebody that's invaluable to their process and the decision that they're going to make.
Mhm.
So, offline, real life version, real life example. I think most people could look at that and go, "Yeah, that happens all the time." Okay, well, let's take a look at what that can look like in social media. I had the same conversation with Tom, uh, the bald one with the goatee, Tom, not me, Tom, because it still says I'm Tom Burton.
Just call him the good looking one. That's all you got to
There you
say.
go, the good
Yeah.
looking one.
Yeah.
Sorry, the attractive one over here,
Yeah.
Tom Burton. So let's say I have that conversation with Tom, and then based on that conversation, I write a social post about it. Right. And I go, hey, I had the conversation. Maybe I tag you, maybe I don't. Doesn't matter. But I could reference your job, your title, your industry, and say, hey, one of the questions he asked or one of the topics we shared, it's really good. And this is what I think, and this is what's important. What do you all think? Publish it in public. Right. That's a social post. It's
Yes.
public message.
It's now one to
But
many. It's now
one
one
to
to many.
many, right?
Yes.
But then to turn that into a one-to-one valuable tool that is a very valuable prospecting, communication, relationship building
Mhm.
tactic is to say, okay, well, who else in my pipeline right now is similar to Tom that would find value from this? And then go share it with them. And that's maybe you want to pop it in email. Maybe you want to
Maybe.
give them a call. Maybe you want
Yeah.
to text it to them. Maybe
Yeah.
you want to send it to them in a LinkedIn message.
Yeah.
But then it's really easy to say, let's see who's on here. Sandy's on here. Go, hey, Sandy, I had this great conversation the other day with somebody or with Tom. We chatted about this, and because you're in the same industry, I thought maybe you would, you know, find value in it, or be interested in it, or add to the conversation. However, whatever your style is, and then boom, I send it to Sandy, and maybe in my relationship with Sandy, I do want to email it to her. And then maybe with Andre, I want to text it to him. And maybe with Edgar, I see his comment on here. Maybe with Edgar, I want to send it to him on LinkedIn Messenger. It really doesn't matter at that point, the channel. We're no longer being, oh, it's social media. But the value is I've got this public piece of content that I've written based on my experience with prospects or customers in the space, and I'm turning that into a public conversation. And then strategically, and that's I think the key, strategically inviting my prospects to join the conversation. What's the outcome here? Well, one, I get a lot of people talking on my post, which builds my algorithm. It
Right.
changes the way people perceive me.
Right.
All I need is one of those prospects to look at this and go, oh my gosh, Brandon's got like 30 people commenting on this. And their view of the seller at that point shifts, because all of a sudden you're a voice in the space. People are responding, people are engaging, people are talking, and you get that social credit for it, not only from the algorithm, but just from human perception. And all of a sudden, you're top of mind. And when those buyers need something, want something, you become the go to person. If you do that enough, right? That's not a
No.
one and done.
No. But what's interesting about what you said, and I think this is super important, even just on the one, just take out one example, right? You just did. You did not send that, so you create the post like you talked about. That post is, let's say it's on LinkedIn, right? So that post is already getting engagement, it's getting comments, it's getting likes, it's getting social proof basically on that post. You send that post, maybe you do send it by email, right? To Sandy, as you said. So you say, hi Sandy, hey, I thought you'd find this relevant, or you DM it or whatever it is, right? I was thinking of you, I thought you'd find this relevant, or even tag her in it. Who knows, right? However it gets there, it
Mhm.
gets there. Now, Sandy looks at that and goes, huh, yeah, this is interesting. This is valuable to me. But you know what? Look at all these other people that it's valuable to, right? It now creates demand, right?
Right.
Because people will tend to do things and take action on things, or can make things more important that they believe that others believe it's important.
Right.
So if you were to just take that same post and dropped it in an email, right, or a link to your blog, even, that social proof isn't there. There is no social
Yeah.
proof. There is no any of that. And so you're missing that impact and that tailwind that can come from the social proof part of it as well. So again, that's just
Yeah.
smart use of social versus it being some gimmick or something. This is just a more
Yeah.
effective use of social.
And I think that's a key. You've said the smart use of social or the more effective use of social. Let's take advantage of the platforms we have. And social is the way that you can have a conversation in front of lots of people 24 hours a day and not have to be there yourself the
No,
entire time.
right.
Right. So as people come and comment, like I had a notification right before we went online when we went live, and it was somebody that commented on my post from last Tuesday.
Yeah.
It was a week ago,
Yeah.
and but they just now happened to come across it. They commented on it, and of course, I get a notification, so I'm able to go right in, pop in, respond, be active in it. But it's another valuable way for me to stay top of mind. I think Edgar was mentioning that earlier here. The right time, I think, is most important, and being active on social media ensures that you're top of mind, making your timing optimal. That's why none of this stuff is one and done. None of this stuff is, oh, let me post once or twice a week. This is actually a valuable use of our time. And where I like to have the conversation with sales leaders is say, well, how many cold calls are they making per day? How many cold calls does your team need to make to get a conversation? How many conversations do they have to qualify somebody for a lead? And what if we did an A/B test and tested a few people with this crazy model of social? And I've not yet, had a pilot program that didn't just beat the shit out of the old way of doing it because of the efficiencies that
Sure.
come with social.
Well, and it builds on itself, as we know, right? So it's not a linear progression. It starts to hockey stick over time as you continue to build more onto
Mhm.
it. So whereas cold calling or outbound email is a very linear process, right? If I do 100 calls, I'll get whatever. If I send 1,000 emails, I get whatever. But that's the end of it. There's nothing that continues to build on that as
Yeah.
it moves forward. So yeah,
Yeah,
there's
that's
a nice side effect of that as well.
yeah, when I was a guest on KD's Kevin Dorsey's show, Live Better, Sell Better, a couple months ago, and we were talking about this. And one of the things he said, he goes, look, as a sales leader, the first 30 days, old school way is going to beat my team doing this methodology. The next 30 days, so in the first 60 days, we're starting to catch up.
Yeah.
But we get into 90 days to
Yeah.
120 days or
Yes.
more, this small little social team kicks
Yes.
the crap out of the old team.
Good way of looking at it. Yes.
And that's the hockey stick
Right.
model that
Right.
happens with this.
Right.
Yeah.
No, the linear versus a thing immediately goes the other direction.
Yeah.
But
It,
again, just to stay back on point, right? Of the what we said this topic with today was this isn't just about getting that meeting, right? This isn't about just hockey sticking the number of meetings that you get. This is about hockey sticking the revenue that you're generating, the sales that you're generating. That's what I get excited about this about,
yeah.
right? Meetings aren't worth a crap if I don't turn them into something,
Right.
that is meaningful. And anyways, we just gone through, you can really start to hockey stick the revenue part of this through doing this over time versus just the meeting or the touch points.
Yeah. Hey, Sandy, I'm going to address this real quick, just so since you're active. Um, you might be watching this on Tom's feed on his LinkedIn profile, and some of the other comments might be coming from my LinkedIn profile. That's why you may not be seeing them. Now, I can
That's kind of
add the
nifty. I didn't know about
chat.
that.
I
So
can
you
add
can,
the chat overlay there. Let's try that. We haven't done that today,
so that's
or we
like a
haven't done that
feed or
yet.
something that shows up there.
Yeah, it should be new comments will get displayed here. I think it just didn't pull the past one. So if somebody
Oh,
wants to chat, there
oh,
she
see,
is.
look at
Sandy's
that.
there.
Oh,
There we
that's kind
go.
of cool.
Yeah, we'll try this format. Next time we'll get rid of this as the overlay and we'll just put it in the comment. But um, oh, she's on Brandon's event. Interesting. I don't know where everyone else is.
I thought
Have
everybody
to
was
saw
just
that.
watching me. I guess we have to reboot this thing and start over.
I know. Yeah. You're on Brandon's event. There's no Brandon here. There's Tom Burton and there's Tom Burton. So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
And
Well,
Edgar's got all comments. So Tom, keep going because you're right. I mean, getting meetings is great if they're strategic, they're the right people. Getting more meetings with strategic people is great. But assuming you have your team well trained and they know how to move from that meeting into a sales opportunity, qualify them and move them along, there's still that time between their first meeting to a closed deal, and there's a lot of opportunity to strengthen your influence, strengthen your voice, strengthen your opportunity by, as Carson would say, connecting with more people. I
mhm.
think he said in the 2.5 years of nurturing that deal along, he connected with over 500 people in the company. And here's what I really loved about his strategy and what he said is he was so focused on networking and connecting with all the people involved that by the time internally with the company he got referred to somebody, he was like, oh yeah, I've already talked to them.
Yeah.
Let me reach out to them and we'll talk about it. He already established relationship with the other parties before he was told to go speak with them, or they were going to get them involved.
Yeah, there's sort of a we need a little whiteboard tool we can add to this here so I can kind of draw some. um, but and there probably is a way we can do that, which we should think about for future things. But basically, which kind of
We could do
hockey
it.
is there a way? Um,
Yeah, I could actually pull Zoom in and we can use the
oh,
Zoom whiteboard.
yeah,
I know you love your whiteboards and you're so
yes, I
good
know.
at it.
See, there's one behind me. I could just move the camera over there and do
Yeah.
that. But
I'm-
my with what you were saying with Carson, right? He was a breadth of what he was doing in the organization. So he was going and building the breadth of connections combined with the depth of connections that he had. And, keeping everybody kind of, he was like keeping everybody, he was the common denominator. And he didn't
Mhm.
talk about this in your show, but he talked about it in one of our previous ones is when people would leave, right? Or there would be turnover and new people would come in. He was like the guy they would go to get the intel on what was actually happening. He knew more about the
Right.
company than the people in the company did because he had a pulse.
Hard to lose a deal that way, right?
Right. It's hard to lose a deal that way. Right.
Yeah.
And he had the social pulse of the organization. So again, that's all part of this going beyond the meeting. And we're going to do more on this. And I can see people listening to this going, but how do you do this? And what's the framework for doing this? And is there a
Mhm.
methodology for, and the answer is yes, that's something that we're going to be doing more of as we go forward. But
Yeah.
conceptually, you can start to see that you may be, working with one person, you get that meeting and maybe the meeting goes well. Now you want to branch out in that organization and leverage that meeting to then start branching into the organization, knowing that that's what you're going to need to do to ultimately get the sale. So
Right.
you might beachhead through a meeting, but then expand, talk about land and expand, right? You then expand through the other pieces that are there. Again, everyone's going to be different in what they're selling and how they're
Yeah.
selling, but the point is, and we're going to be doing a lot more on how you actually do this versus just,
Yeah.
this, but that's the general idea.
Yeah. And so anyone that's listening, any other questions you have about that, I'd love to have those in the comments and let Tom address those. But my question for you, Tom, and I know you and I have talked about this, how does this relate in terms of thinking of like account-based marketing? How does this work for like an account-based selling, if you will?
Well, I think it's perfect. It's, hand in glove with account-based marketing, right? So if I have my dream, in fact, it's almost easier. If I have my dream 100 accounts that I want to go after, and that's what I've been assigned, I can look at those accounts quickly and go, okay, well, let's say I know nobody in any of those accounts, nobody in any of those accounts. I'm starting from ground zero, from nothing, right? So I can go, okay, well, who would I want to make that initial, or who would be the people I would want to make initial contact within those accounts? You can work that out and start working towards getting the meetings that are there. And then as you start building that up, then you can start then expanding within those accounts as you start to get traction in there and understanding, most business B2B sales, right, have multiple stakeholders and different groups that are involved and all of that. So you can start to understand the tracks that you need to be in there within those accounts.
Mhm.
But to me, that's a lot easier having an account-based strategy, because then I'm really only focused. I know what I'm focused on. I know who I'm trying to build the relationships with. And my guess is as well is there's probably even a lot of synergy between those 100 accounts. So as I start to use my social proof, like we talked about earlier, right? If one of my accounts is 3M and another account is, I don't know, Honeywell, then if I see 3M, if I'm Honeywell and I see 3M commenting on something or vice versa, the credibility that that provides to me as I move through. I mean,
Mhm.
so you start to visualize what's possible with this, and
Right.
you see it's just so much more effective than the traditional pick up the phone. I have nothing against phone. I have nothing against email. I have nothing against any of those.
Mm.
I like to get a lot done with the time that I've got. That's all.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's using the right tool at the right time,
Right.
right? I think I love the phone, but the phone isn't necessarily the most efficient tool to start any sort
That's
of
right.
conversation with somebody because the people we want to talk to, well, they do the same thing we do, man. They've got spam filters, they've got blockers, they've got caller ID. I don't know who you are. I'm not going to answer my phone. You go to voicemail, and I mean, but once I am I'm in a conversation with somebody or am in a relationship, man, I like to move it to text and calls and Zooms and everything as much as I can without being annoying
Sure.
because it's a richer medium and it helps facilitate conversation. I'm not opposed to hopping on a plane and going to visit somebody and
Sure.
having dinner and sharing a bottle of wine.
Sure.
Like I That's all about the relationship building process. We're not saying social and sit on your butt at home all day long. We're saying when you are at home and you're using, use social for relationship building or relationship expanding, it's a very efficient tool, but there's a mindset shift and there's got to be some strategies and systems to it in order to do that well. And that's where I think the biggest challenge is and why so many people go, oh yeah, we tried social, it didn't work, is that if there was a strategy and a system, it was send out connection request, get accepted, and then when they accept it, send them messages with how awesome we are. Here's our brochure. This is what we do. I mean, I got an email today that the preview said, "I'm sending this to you again because I really believe that we can." Do you think I read beyond that?
Yeah. Well,
I don't
I call those
care.
the 3S strategies, the super shitty strategies. Right?
I
It's a
like it.
strategy. It's just not very good.
I love it. But it's that constant, like, we use social to do this and it didn't work. Well, I get it, but you use the phone for cold calling, trying to earn first meetings, and it doesn't work real well, but you keep doing it.
Right. Right. No,
But
it's not effective. And as you said before, you'll be way more effective in doing that. And I know we're running out of time here, but if I even take that again, full circle again, if I'm now using that to maybe using social to get that first meeting, and now I'm using social to also build the relationships with other people in the company, right? Rather than calling everybody in the company or emailing everybody in the company or the people that are the stakeholders that I need to have involved. I'm using social to facilitate that. And then, yes, I augment that with whatever makes sense, whether that's phone, email, Zoom meetings, or whatever, but I'm never stopping the social aspect of it. Um,
right.
and that's ultimately what Carson was talking about in his 9-figure deal. It's like they had no choice but to give them the deal. They had no choice to only do the deal with them because he was in the DNA of the company. I mean,
Yeah.
there was no other option, you know?
Yeah.
So
And I think before we wrap up, I like to say it's, maybe people are thinking, well, of course it was a nine-figure deal. You do that for a nine-figure deal. Well, I think we do that for all deals. We do it at the scale that's appropriate for the deal,
mhm, mhm,
which means maybe on their team there's not 500 people you reach out to, there's 5.
mhm,
But either way, the model is the same. It's to win a deal nowadays. I mean, when I started in sales, there was usually like one, maybe two people that were decision makers. And even then, when you were in the meeting, there was one, maybe two people in the room. And now there's 5, 6, 10, 12 people. And even though they may not have legit authority to make a decision, they're given authority or they're given power and a voice by their leaders because they turn around and go, well, what do you guys think?
The
And
influencers, right? And
the
the
influencers.
influencers can stop deals so fast, right?
Yep.
Especially if you are not building those relationships with those influencers. And that's always been the case. That's not new
Yep.
now. But I think the power of the influencer is potentially more, the power of the influencer is greater now than it possibly has been in the past. Um,
Oh, absolutely.
you know,
And it's greater for a couple of reasons. One is I think the culture of building teams and leading
yeah,
people is much
yeah,
more inclusive.
yeah,
But the second thing is those influencers all have the same thing we do. They've got
yes,
LinkedIn, they've got
yes,
Google, they've got
yes,
their phones.
yes,
They're seeing all this information, and
yes,
so they've got a belief, and it's real easy for somebody. I mean, here's an example. Um, Somebody in the room says, this is really cool, but I follow a person online that does something similar. Let's go look at what they're doing as well,
hmm,
right? If we have that voice and we are consistent and we do it well and we kind of own a bit of the internet space, the LinkedIn space, by building that influence in that network, by getting people commenting, by going out and commenting on their post, and all of a sudden we kind of become the center of that. Well, that social proof is very, very powerful.
yep,
And then you don't have, and I remember losing a deal like 2 3 years ago, and it basically came down to that exact scenario. And as somebody who had a much bigger social name than I did at the time,
hmm,
and they just went poop, and it was all about that social proof.
hmm,
We were still kind of young in what we were doing. I didn't have the big the following that's as big as I do now. And I mean, it was like that,
hmm, yep.
because social influence is a very powerful thing.
That is for sure, in all
Yeah.
aspects of the deal, right? All the
Yep.
way through. So,
All the way through. So,
yeah.
all right, you want to wrap us up for today, Tom?
The moral of the story is social is not just about the meeting. Um,
Yeah.
and what did we
And
say
we're
earlier that Sandy, I thought, made a good point on is that, what did we say? Oh, yeah, nobody hits a quota with just a meeting. So, words
There
to
it
live
is.
by. Words to live
Yeah.
by.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Andre, Sandy, Edgar, I don't know if I left anyone out today or not. If I did, I'm so sorry. But thanks for joining. Thursday, you wanna choose a topic for Thursday now?
Well, I think we'll talk a bit about how demand gen ties into some of this social stuff. There's a lot of buzz around demand gen right now. It's a
Mhm.
very also misunderstood area in a lot of cases, and I think
It's
there's
not misunderstood. It's become the word of the season, and everybody
yeah,
uses it, and nobody
yeah,
knows what they mean by
yeah. So
it.
so anyway, that's what we'll kind of
Uh,
focus on, and hopefully we'll get some of our technology stuff sorted out by then.
yeah, so we wouldn't have Tom and Tom.
Oh, we don't go live
Yeah.
twice or whatever happened today. Right?
I have no idea.
I'm very
Yeah.
happy
All right.
that
Well, and
people
I
made
see
it.
Drew on there as well. Drew, thanks for
Yeah,
joining us.
thanks.
So, everybody, we'll see you Thursday at 2 o'clock. If you want to join us, and if you have any topics you want us to discuss, or you ever want to come join us, or anything like that, look, we want to build community that's talking about this, not just from a social selling, but from a perspective of going, how do we usually use how do we actually use this powerful tool that we all have free access to win more deals and grow more revenue.
Yep.
So come and join us and be a part of it.